Hello everybody, I'm going to show you how to put together a really quick cushion using the brand new fabric panels that are from Lemon Lane. Now they're in conjunction with Two Red Robins, so you're going to see beautiful artwork along the way. But this one is really it's simple and easy because there's no zips. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing that I've done is I've cut out both the panels, the front panel and also the back panel. And then using my cutting mat for measuring, I've taken a measurement of 15 centimetres from the top edge of this plain panel. And I've marked it on both sides. Now I've also cut myself a strip. The strips are actually included as part of the kit or part of the printed panel. And this is the piece that I'm going to use as an overlap so that the cushion is hidden inside. So I'm going to take this piece, place it on top of my fabric, and then I'm going to use that as a guide to take my rotary cutter and just cut through this piece of fabric. And you can do this against a ruler if you prefer to, but I find it's quite simple to just cut through. Anywhere where I was going over the other fabric, I'm just going to go back over it and make sure that I've gone through all of those pieces. Right, okay, there we go. There's one last little bit there. I personally would choose to use a pair of scissors here, but being totally honest, just before I came in, I couldn't find them. So what we're going to do next? Well, I've got my machine here now. Oh my gosh, this little machine is like a baby to me. I've had this for a very, very long time. I was trying to remember exactly over the weekend and I couldn't work it out. I think I've had it since I was about 22. So that means that we've had this machine, oh my gosh, 36 years. That's a long, long time. Now, it doesn't actually have its own needle threader like all the modern machines do now. So I have just got to thread this by hand. So bear with me for a second. Whoops, had it threaded and then pulled it out. And I've got a big cop of white cotton here that I've actually taken off the overlock machine at home. Now, this is just a little reminder here of why we love those automatic needle threaders, because you don't have to do what I'm doing at the moment and keep having multiple goes at threading the needle. So I'm just going to get that sorted. And as this isn't, I don't think this model's even available anymore, so I'm not going to worry about talking you around it. I'm just going to sew. So the first thing that I need to do on these two pieces that I have just created, the smallest one, which is the overlap panel, and the one that it's going to be attached to, I need to look at where I need finished seams. So one of those finished seams needs to be on here. And I'm just going to take the smallest of all the panels that we've got, and I'm folding over the edge. Now, I'm not going to pin anything when I'm sewing, so I'm going to fold over, and as I go along, I'm going to be using my thumbnail to just create that flat and use my fingers to push it in. If you're more comfortable with pins, then please get the pins out. So let's start sewing. So I'm doing a double seam here. I'm just going to get this going. And I pull the fabric back, fold it to about 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 centimetre, and then literally using my fingernails, I'm tucking in that seam allowance. And we're just going to let this go. And I'm using a white thread because you've got very soft colour in this pattern, but also the other thing is we've got multiple colours in the whole design. And white seemed to be the nicest. I did try it with a couple of other different coloured threads and it didn't look as good. So I'm just rolling that in as I go along, letting the machine do the work for us. It's so easy when we're sewing. And then once you've got it flat, if you use your fingers to get some tension on it, it will stay rolled in for you and you can get your foot down and get to the end of that panel. So there we go, that's the first one done. I'm going to leave it attached, save myself some time, and we'll do all the trimming in one go. So this is the next panel I need to do the top edge of. So this will be the bottom half of the back of the actual cushion itself. So lift the foot up or use whatever mechanism your machine's got. And then I'm just going to roll that round, keep on going. Now, I started my sewing career actually working on industrial machinery. So although this was my domestic machine at home that I used, and when I was making wedding dresses and all those sort of really soft fabrics that needed lots of attention and gentle sewing, this machine was fabulous. But it's also been great over the years for using for things like my cushions, etc. So I'm just going to snip those two panels apart. So we've got the first one, which is the base of the cushion. And I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So that's my cushion cover, as you can see. I'm going to turn it over. And the way that this is going to work, this panel will sit at the bottom really nicely. This panel is going to overlap by as much as we can without having any problems with the seam allowances. And this one is going to join on here. So I need to join these two panels together next, then line everything up so that it covers the full back of the cushion. So let's move the machine back in place and do some more sewing. So placing the fabric underneath the foot, I'm just going to start it off and do a couple of back stitches. Now the back stitching is actually really important, and at the points that I show it, I'd really like you to try, if you can, to do it at home, because we are going to be putting some tension on those seams when we're actually going to be putting the cushion in. I'm sure you've seen it when you're doing quilts at home and you're changing the bed. And occasionally what will happen is that you end up with corners of the quilt where the fabric's joined. Occasionally it can actually, you can hear the stitches breaking. Well, we want to make sure that doesn't happen to us. So I've just literally stitched that down. Now I'm just going to do a row of top stitching. And I like this. This is a bit of a sneaky trick really, because what this does is it saves us having to do any ironing. So as I'm going along, all I'm doing is opening up the seam and making sure that it's nice and flat. And you want to do that because if you don't, you will end up with like a little pocket. And for those of you that sew regularly, you'll know that that is something that can happen so easily. And you just need to take your eye off it for a moment or two, and that can be the outcome. But what that's also done is not only has it flattened it, you can see how beautifully flat that is now, but it's reinforced that seam. So the next part of this is lining everything up. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to do this in two parts. I'm going to start off and we're going to put a piece of Velcro on. So to put the Velcro on, I'm just going to place the first panel down and I'm going to I've got hook and loop. So I've got a fluffy bit and a rough bit. I'm going to take the fluffy piece and pop that onto here. So let's find the middle, which we've done there. I'm just going to pinch it so that I know where it is and pop the fluffy piece of the Velcro down. Now you can use whatever method that you would like to actually apply this. And I'm just going to take that right to the edge. Closures on cushions, there are so many choices. I'm choosing something, and remember the needle down to pivot your machine. I like to think about different finishes, but it just depends on how much time you've got. This is such a quick way of creating a closure, and it also gives us the chance to be able to change our cushions and wash them as often as we'd like. So let's find a little pair of, I've got a little pair of scissors there, my little cross stitch scissors. Use those. And so that is the first piece. And I've got what we call dead cotton here. I've got a couple of little pieces where I didn't pull the threads out the way from the back of it when I started. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to leave that for a moment. The next thing that I'm going to do to line all of this up, and this is how I think it's a good idea for you to work at home, is take the Velcro and just place it so that part of it's lined up and it's all flat. And then all you need, is a piece of paper. And because you can imagine when that's all pushed out, it's going to be quite tight. So I don't want it to move too much when we're positioning this, because remember, I'm not using any pins. So let's move that out the way. So I'm just going to line that up here like that. I'm going to move this out the way. I'm going to hold on to the paper, pull that, and I know that that's in the right place for me to be able to stitch. It's as simple as that. It's a good little trick. And, you know, when you're manufacturing, you find all these little shortcuts. It's a bit like batch crafting. So, as we're just attaching this piece of Velcro, really quick and easy, and that's our fastening. I prefer to have one piece in the middle of the cushion. Some of you will prefer to have multiple pieces or even go along the whole length, but this is sort of a quick way of being thrifty too. So that's my big roll of thread moved. One day I'll bring in the really posh machines and we'll have a play with those. So let me show you how this is going to line up. So I'm going to take the two pieces of Velcro, check that I've got it level on this side, and then that's just going to simply sit on top. And if we're on accurate, it'll line up perfectly, which it does. That's great. So now we are ready to stitch the cushion together. So first of all, I need the right sides together. So right sides together, I'm going to start sewing, and I'm going to start in the top corner. So let's get that. Now, I am one of those people that sews without pins, and I'm going to show you a couple of little things that I find make it easier for me. So first of all, let's get started. So I'm just going to do a back stitch where I'm starting to make sure that those stitches are nice and firm. And then I'm going to come into the corner, and once I get to the corner, again, I'm going to back stitch, because this is where we're going to cut into the fabric. And I don't know about you, but I have occasionally let my scissors slip and got too close to that corner, and then found that what happens is you end up with a little tiny hole. That's the way to make sure it doesn't happen. Bring the two edges together, and then I hold it, put some tension on, line the other fabrics up, and just keep it all in my hands. So I've got nice control over the fabric, and because I'm holding it in pieces, I'm making sure that as I'm stitching, the tension on the fabric stays absolutely perfect. Also, the other thing that this makes a difference with, and again, we're at a corner, so I'm just going to back sew it, is that when you then come to look at this fabric, you'll see that it is really nice and flat. No little bumps in the road. So I'm now coming down the other side. So at this point, I'm going to make sure that it's all nice and flat on my sewing bed. And then let's go again. Now, the reason I haven't lined this all up is because we've got to deal with what's inside. So we're now ready to go to the bottom and hold that. Bring that up in pieces until you get where these two panels overlap. And I'm going to lay down the first one and make sure that the other one is tucking underneath where it needs to go. So let's get a bit closer to where they join up, and then we'll go like that. Just get that nice and flat underneath. Make sure everything is parallel so the lines are all joining nicely. Check that the length is right, and we're good to go. As we get to where those joins are, again, I'm going to put a little bit of a back stitch on there. And the reason that I'm doing that is, you know, when you have a cushion and you're trying to push the cushion pad in and you get a little bit of tension at the sides, that will stop it actually coming undone and tearing. So we're good to go. I'm coming all the way down to the bottom now. I'm just lining these fabrics up. even just a couple of millimeters out can make a difference to, how flat your cushion looks, how nicely it lines up, and just making sure that we get a really professional finish. So into that corner again, I've just done a quick backstop. Try and keep your needle in the fabric. I know this machine pretty well, so I know how forgiving the stitching can be. And then I know you're probably wondering what happened to the other part of this. It got lost in a house move about 20 years ago and couldn't bring myself to let my machine go. So, and I quite like being able to see the way the needle works and all the mechanics and everything. And the other thing is it reminds me to service it regularly and give it a clean. So just coming along to the bottom of this corner, there we go, we're there. And one more, I'm gonna lift that in because I've overshot a little tiny bit. And now we need to get the rest of this all lined up flat. So checking that my cushion's nice and flat, which it is, and we're good to go again. So let's keep going there. Just checking everything's flat and I'm happy with it, which I am. I'm over those seams, so I'm doing some back stitching, just keeping extra reinforced, and then I'm going to go right up to that corner, and that's us done. Okay, so now the best bit, turning it inside out. Before we do that, we need to take off these corners. So I can get quite close to that stitching because I know I've gone backwards and forwards and I've reinforced it, so it isn't going to poke out. I can come over to the other side and do the same, so all four corners. And then if it were too bulky, I might even consider any trimming that I would need to do anywhere else, but I'm happy with those results. So now we need to open up our cushion. This is the best bit. Take the corners, turn those. If you've got an old chopstick or something that you can use to turn the corners with, that's always a good idea. Don't use your scissors because that is how we get those holes. And then we're almost there. So my chopstick, I'm just going to poke out that corner. I've got again a bit of thread. I'll get rid of you. Get a nice flat corner. And there you go, look at that. That's absolutely perfect right angle. That's what we're looking for on all four of them. And it does help if you've reinforced them and you get a little bit heavy-handed with your turning them inside out, then it's less likely to poke through. So just going through the last one there, and then I'm just going to run this along all the seams to make sure I get them as flat as I can. And let's take a look. Now, let's roll our cushion cover back. Really happy with that. I'm just going to move my sewing machine. So you can see there, a bit of fluff. Wow, that's lovely. So I'm going to give that a quick press, but I can't wait. So I'm going to go straight in with my cushion cover. Now, this is where that reinforcing comes in because look, we've got a gap to fit in here. Sometimes these cushions are quite full and fluffy, and that's where if you occasionally you can hear the stitches just pulling at the side. We don't want that to happen, so we're making sure that we reinforce them. So don't want my cushion cover to be too tight, so I'm just going to get that all nice and flat, and then let's line up that Velcro perfectly. Oops, not quite. So you can see it's really sticky, but it's also doing a great job. And there, oh, it makes me happy when I finish a project. And you are going to love the results. Look at that. Wow.